Good hi, I'm Jay. So I like characters, and you probably do too if you're watching this. When I was a kid, my favorite show was Avatar: The Last Airbender, and my favorite character was absolutely Zuko. No, it wasn't Aang, but that's just because I had a soft spot for characters that learn not to be dicks. But I really did love Aang too, because he's just so Aang. And when I grew up a little more, Legend of Korra was announced, and I was super excited for an Avatar that was a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and a little more modern. And so today I want to look at how Legend of Korra did what it did in terms of character, mainly focusing on the two protagonists and how they fit in their respective narratives. So what kind of story is Avatar? Orson Scott Card proposes that there are 4 kinds of stories, each of which focuses on one aspect of storytelling. There's the world story, which focuses on the society and structure of whatever world it takes place in. It has main characters, but it doesn't matter if you care about them, it just matters that you learn about the world. There's the idea story, which focuses on answering a question like, who killed Markiplier? There's also the event story, which is focused on whatever has happened that must be resolved. Oh no, Sauron's got the thing and we gotta get the thing to the thing, and what happens along the way is the important part. The characters, the ideas, and the world all serve to make interesting things happen. Lastly, there's the character story. You might have fantastic worlds and societies, you might have great events, and you might have burning questions. In the end, however, the only purpose of any of those is the character. I'd argue that this last type is where Avatar fits in. The focus isn't on the world, it's on how Aang, Katara, and Sokka experience it, what they feel as they go through it, whether it's injustice at the traditions of the Water Tribe or learning valuable lessons about trust in the secret tunnel.
Secret tunnel, through the mountains, secret tunnel.
There are important events in Avatar. Sozin's Comet is approaching and Ba Sing Se is being invaded, but the reason they're important is because of the pressure they put on our main cast, by being time limits and such. As for questions, there are plenty of those. How will Aang master the elements? Where can he find the moon and ocean spirits? Why did the Fire Nation attack in the first place? But the questions are actually more like, how will Aang change in order to master the elements? How will Aang seek guidance from the spirits? How did Roku and Sozin's relationship lead to the Fire Nation's imperialism? Every part of the story is there, but they're all serving character. That said, in a character study, it's important that your character is likable. Your audience has to care about these guys for the story's full weight to hit. You don't really have to care about Frodo, just that he's competent enough to defeat Sauron. But we do need to care about Aang, and that usually means he has to be good at something. We like it when people are good at something, and it comes easily to them, because we don't perceive them as totally lame and a burden to the world. And we like taking pride in valuable attributes. However, they have to be bad at something too. That something is whatever they need to resolve the story. They are not good at whatever they need to be, and that's where they struggle, because of whatever flaw they have. Aang is a good airbender. Hell, he's a great airbender. And not only does that make him competent, it makes him unique, because no one else is one. We like it when our characters are unique. We like feeling that we're following the most interesting characters in whatever world we're in. However, Aang doesn't know any of the other elements. He can't take on huge amounts of soldiers, and his nature is to run, avoid, and find another way. While this is awesome for being on the run from the Fire Nation, his lack of boldness gets in the way when he's trying to learn earthbending. It would make perfect sense that, as an airbender, earthbending is a form that he just can't wrap his head around easily. It's really cool when something that made your character strong in one situation is a weakness they have to overcome in another. Like when Zuko loses his anger towards the end of the series and has to learn a new way of firebending. And Aang's flaw being a tendency to avoid conflict isn't something that comes up first when he's trying to learn earthbending, it's why he's 100 years late in the first place. Katara herself spells all this good at one thing, bad at another stuff out in more simplistic terms at the opening of each episode.
His airbending skills are great. He has a lot to learn before he's ready to save anyone.
Now that we've established that, I suggest that Korra is Aang's absolute opposite when it comes to her character arc and what she has to learn. In terms of elements, she starts the series having mastered the exact 3 that Aang hasn't mastered yet, and lacks the one thing Aang had as a given. And boy, if you don't want people saying you're telling the same story over and over again, this is the way to do it. Korra is nothing like Aang in personality either. She's bold, confrontational, runs towards danger rather than away from it, and is steadfast in her beliefs, as opposed to Aang having a willingness to change his mind. Korra is also older than Aang, and the themes of her story change to reflect that. These aren't just kids beginning their dabbles in crushes anymore. They're older teens with love triangles who play sports and have to work for a living. So how does that actually play out? Well, the writers here certainly saddled themselves with a burden. Not only is doing the inverse of your last character arc difficult, making people accept that you're doing the inverse of your last character arc is difficult. You've made the people who related most with your last main character, making them more likely to be the most loyal fans, relate the least with this one, meaning you kind of alienate much of your original fanbase. When Korra first burst onto the scene, my thoughts were, she's too yell-y, she's too good at everything, and she never listens to anyone ever. And considering that the first series is still my favorite story, that makes perfect sense. Aang listens to everyone. Aang doesn't yell unless it's serious. Aang wasn't bad at anything Korra's good at, so of course she seems overpowered. That said, Legend of Korra's narrative did bend to fit her, just like Aang's. Do you think if her greatest struggle was fighting Ozai, she would have had any problems with it? Hell no! She would have knocked his head off like that! In terms of force and ability to confront, she's a powerhouse. On the other hand, do you think Aang would have had any trouble with Amon? No! Aang could have understood his cause, been sympathetic, and would have acknowledged the disconnect present in the city. When it was Avatar Day and the townsfolk said he had committed an injustice against them, he didn't get angry and blast them with air. He talked to them, stood trial, and only became confrontational when Kyoshi, a much more Korra-like avatar, came out. And even if it did come down to a fight between the two, Aang would have been much more familiar with finding someone who's hiding within the city, and his graceful, flowing way of fighting would have been much more suited to dispatch Amon than Korra's was. Because Aang is empathetic and likely to see the best in even the worst of people, it was best for him to have an enemy that seemed unequivocally terrible, while using Zuko to push moral ambiguity. Because Korra is bold, decisive, and black and white, Amon being sympathetic and not entirely wrong was important to force her to grow. These narratives were built to give their respective characters the most challenging situations for them, resulting in the most powerful resolution of character. So excellent job, Avatar. You've defended your place among my favorite stories once again. Well, except for one tiny thing. The way Korra learned airbending wasn't at all indicative of her character development. Seriously? A blast of air as a loved one is being captured and she has no other bending? There's no finding another angle, no spiritual realization, it's just a loved one is in danger and she forces her way through the issue just like every other time she has a problem. I'd like to call back to The Last Airbender for a second, the episode where Aang learns Earth. He spends the whole episode sucking at earthbending because he can't be forceful, resorting to dodging and running at every confrontation. Then when Sokka's in danger and he can't just move out of the way, Aang is forced to put himself between Sokka and the threat. Having seen what he can do, he then moves the rock and earthbends. I've spent this entire Jayzentation thing talking about how the stories are inverses and how that's a good move. So why, oh why, would you have their central moment of realization be the same situation? It's like you copy-pasted it from your last show. Anyways, rant over. I hope you enjoyed. I'm Day and have a wonderful J. Wait, fuck.